Hi there, my name is Christy Dunaway, and I have been asked about 500,000 times to do an updated video on my son and his journey. And I apologize that it's taking me this long to get to this point, but 4 years ago, I made the first video about my son's absolute transformation, and still to this day, it blows me away. And just recently, somebody else said, "You've got to give us an update." And I said, okay, fine. So here we go. You guys get an update on what's going on. So for those of you that haven't met me before, let me back up a little bit and give you a little bit of background on my son. So I have this amazing boy who actually tomorrow is going to turn 16. And when he was 4, 5, 6 years old, we were starting to notice some tendencies to inattentiveness and forgetfulness and just kind of all over the place, a bit hyperactive, those kinds of things. And he started kindergarten. I didn't think anything of it. Just typical boy behavior as far as I knew. He was my first, so what do I know, right? And it wasn't long, and the teachers were sending me messages. The teacher was sending me messages saying, "We see some things with Scott," his name is Scott, "and we'd like to address him with you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, is he misbehaving?" And they were like, "No, he is a great kid and very respectful and very kind." And she started just listing some of these things: inattentiveness, forgetfulness, kind of the absent-minded professor, having trouble staying in his seat, very fidgety, all those kinds of things. And it was causing him to have trouble keeping up with what was going on. It wasn't that he wasn't retaining the information. He just couldn't pay attention long enough to receive it. So we took him to his primary doctor, and the primary doctor, kind of went through things with me and said, this might actually be ADHD, and gave me kind of the lowdown, and, here's what you can do, and here's the medications, and, that kind of thing. So, of course, before I went and just threw him on medication, I did some research and went and had him seen by a therapy facility and did some full testing. This testing was not cheap, and insurance did not pay for it. But I really wanted to make sure that this is what it was before we went the route of medication. So we finished all the testing, and he was on the very high end of ADHD. And we kind of had figured that out. We figured out through that testing that he was an auditory learner versus a visual primary learner. We learned all kinds of things about how his brain works and how he receives information. It was really quite interesting. So we started him on medication because that's what they all recommended. And it helped. You could definitely see a marked difference, but he was still struggling. He was struggling to the point of he would come home from school, and his teachers were amazing, by the way. Kudos to all you teachers out there, because you guys were amazing to my boy. And they would send his schoolwork home with him, and he could finish it at home because he would have trouble finishing it at school. The medication would start to wear off, or it just wasn't working that day, or whatever. So he would come home from school and sit down and do all of his classwork that he couldn't get done and all of his homework. And he was exhausted. So if you think about it, this little first, second grader was going all day long and then coming home and having to do even more. And by the time he was done, he was so exhausted, he would be weepy. And my son, if you know him, is not a weepy kid. So we did this for a while, and you could just see how stressed he was. So we made the decision that since I work from home, that I would remove him from school and start homeschooling him. And honestly, it was the best decision we ever made. Man, he did so well in a quieter environment, more one-on-one, not so many distractions and so many kids and that kind of thing. So we made that decision, and it was great. He did really well. So fast forward, he was around 10 years old. Now he'd been on medication at this point for about 4 years, and he started developing some weird side effects. And I think they were developing all along, but they were always so slight that I didn't notice it till it was full blown, like it was kind of a slow fade into. He wasn't gaining weight. He wasn't sleeping well. He wasn't eating well. He started developing like tics, like pulling in his shirt, blinking his eyes, clearing his throat, like watching TV like this. Like, it was just so odd. The whole thing was just odd. And I took him to his doctor and was like, what is going on here? And she was like, it's a side effect of the medication. You have to realize this is, basically a legalized amphetamine that we're giving him. And I was like, oh, I'm not liking this at all. So a couple months after that, we were doing research and just trying to figure out what else. Maybe we should try some other medications. So we started trying other medications, and like the side effects of those medications were worse than the original ones. So it was a nightmare. And if you've ever gone through this, you totally know what I'm talking about. Some medications would make him cryy and weepy all the time. Other ones were making him angry. Other ones weren't doing anything. So we went back to the original one. After we did all of that, we started noticing issues with him sleeping at night, and I was having to give him melatonin to get to sleep, and he was starting to get like these night sweats, and these night sweats were so severe that he would get up in the morning and walk out into the living room. I'll never forget it. And he was gray, like gray, you guys, and incoherent. Like, he couldn't put words together. Now he's 11 at this point, or almost 11. And I mean, I remember freaking out, calling my best friend. She's a physician assistant. I'm like, what do I do? Whatever. And, his bed was soaked. And so he had just like basically soaked the bed with sweat all night long. It was just these night sweats. And of course, she's like, get some electrolytes in him, blah, 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 use this. She recommended, the IDLife electrolytes, which I was like, okay, whatever she says, I'll do. And of course, she goes, if you don't see him start to turn within, I can't remember how long it was, then take him to the hospital, but it's probably dehydration. You just need to get some electrolytes into him. And I was like, okay. So we did, and she was right. Within, 5 minutes or so, you could see him start to pink up and, be coherent and all of that again. So anyway, I was pretty much fed up at this point. We were homeschooling and we were doing the best we could, and these tics were not getting better. These side effects were not getting better. Well, right around that time, coincidence, I think not, I started working with this company called IDLife. And honestly, I started with IDLife so that I can make some extra money for my family. My previous career had closed and I had to find a way to provide for the household. So I chose IDLife. My best friend, again, she's a PA, and she was working with it and doing very well with it. And I was like, I love helping people. It makes good money and it's customized to the individual. I'm in. Let's try this. 6 months later, I was sitting at a table with a group of ladies that also sell the product, just learning and trying to figure out how the whole thing works. And she had made a comment about how it had helped her son, and he had very similar issues. And I was like, okay, well, what's the worst could happen? So I pulled his assessment. I went to the IDLife website and put in all his information, medications, every medical conditions. I put his ADHD in there, and it popped out at me exactly what was recommended for somebody like him. And I thought, well, what's the worst could happen, right? So the box comes in, and I had ordered the IDLife Energy, this right here. It's just called Energy. I know, right? Simple. I had ordered the IDLife Hydrate, which is this right here. This one's my favorite. And I had ordered the vitamins that were designed for somebody that would have a condition like ADHD. So we pulled him off his medication, and the first couple of days he was all over the place, you guys. Bing, 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 bing. If you've ever taken an ADHD kid off medication, you know that first day is like really bad. But I went ahead and put him on the IDLife regimen on the same day. So it was kind of like this, like all over the place. And then by about day 3, we start to see it was a little less. Day 5, a little less. And by about day 7, it was like this. He had leveled out. And I was blown away. And I thought, surely this can't be from this. And I mean, I still was not believing it myself. But I thought, if it is, it is, right? So let's just keep doing it. Let's just see how this goes. And we continued. And even at one point, I pulled him off of the vitamins just to see like placebo effect maybe. And within a few days, we started to see his attention span all over the place again. And then another time I pulled him off the energy and hydrate just to see if maybe it was just that was helping him. And it was the same thing. For him, it was the combination of the two. It was the combination of so our assessment showed that somebody with ADHD, that the PubMed journals show that they need more omegas and zinc and magnesium. And I thought, all right, then that's what we'll give him. So that was what was in his packs. So it truly was a remarkable experience for us to see him shift into the child that he was designed to be. I had my son back, I had my son back, my baby. He was this amazing, joyful, hungry kid who loves to sleep. And what was amazing is I think within a week, the tics were gone. I mean, if not sooner. All of the side effects were gone. And one of the best parts about this story is that he was able to be put back in school again. So he started the 7th grade in public school, and he's a 10th grader, and he's done amazing. He's, for the most part, all A's and B's, and he's happy and he's joyful. Now, let me be very clear. IDLife did not cure, treat, or prevent his ADHD. The boy still has it. If you've ever met him, he still has it. But it was helping him manage what he was going through with the ADHD condition in the same way the medication was, without the side effects. For him, that's the truth. That's what happened. I fast forward to today. I've told this story so many times now, and I always say, I started IDLife for the money. I'll just be honest, but I stayed for my son, because when I saw that life-changing effect on his life, I can't imagine not sharing this with other moms. I don't know if this will help them or not, or help their kid or not, but if it helps one not have to be on a legalized amphetamine, I think that's a win. That's a huge win. So yes, IDLife was a huge, absolute support system for my son and what he's going through and what he continues to go through. He's now in the 10th grade, all A's and B's, integrated back into school, thriving, huge group of friends, just the happiest kid you've ever met, the most obedient, loving kid you've ever met. And just recently we did a DNA test on him, just to see if there was anything else we might be missing. That was huge for us too. There was a couple little things that we were like, we didn't know that about him. Like, that's just his genetics. And we were able to tweak his vitamins again a little bit, just to make sure it matched up with what his body really needed. So in the end here at IDLife, what we do is we help people do life better by customizing it to what they need. And he needed something different than what I needed. And he might have needed something different than who you're thinking about for this specific videos content needs. I don't know what they need, but IDLife does. And that's what the power of the assessment. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I just had to share, my boy's going to be 16 tomorrow, and he's doing amazing.